The Firefly X. I've been waiting for this camera for 6 months, 8 months? Needless to say, a very long time. I actually purchased it when it first came out back in January, and it took this long to ship thanks to the whole global pandemic thing that's going on. Anyways, was it worth the wait? Yeah, it's a pretty good camera overall, but I don't think it stands head and shoulders over anything else I already have. The key defining difference, and the reason why I take this camera with me everywhere I go versus something like the SJ8 Pro, Phantop Moment 6S, or any of the Akaso cameras, is that the Firefly X is waterproof without an external case. The waterproofing is pretty minimal, mind you, and when you look at the camera closely, you can see that there's these little rubber things that stick into the ports and prevent water from getting in when the camera is submerged. Honestly, I do not trust this. I don't trust it at all, and I have a feeling that one day a little bit of dust is going to get underneath, or maybe these really cheap feeling clips are going to break that hold it in place, and the camera's just going to die on me. And that means the camera is best used in basic situations where there's no risk of high impact with water. Things like swimming around in a pool where you might dunk it once or twice, or being splashed by water on the trail. And there you are, that's the key concern with build quality. Otherwise, it is excellent. More solid than most cameras I've tested to date since it's made of a thicker feeling plastic. Firefly also has the user interface pretty down pat. More or less everything is easy to access off the main screen. There's plenty of settings and they're all in places that make sense. Funny enough, even the touchscreen works pretty well when it's wet, and that's not usually the case with these. If you've ever used a wet phone, you'll know that it can cause the touchscreen to go wild. This camera seems to be okay for the most part. Just wipe it off with a sleeve and you'll be good to go. This is a sample of the gyro stabilization on the Firefly X when I'm just walking along here. It's also quite windy, so I figure you might be hearing more wind noise than my voice. This is a good sample of the microphone in a windy environment as well. Right now I'm walking against the wind, so it's not as bad as it could be. I don't know if you can see just how windy it is, but hopefully the wind is not being picked up by the microphone. Otherwise we're just going to have to redo all of these clips again. This time we're at 4K 30 frames per second with the image stabilization turned on. This is the highest resolution that supports image stabilization, but the highest frame rate mode is 1440p 60. It's 4K 60 frames per second. I have the image stabilization turned off because it is not available in this setting. You can't use image stabilization in this setting, but you can use digital zoom, which is pretty cool. Look at that. Oh yeah, check out that digital zoom. 1440p 60 with image stabilization turned on. Camera calls it 2.5K, it's 2560 by 1440, and this is the highest frame rate mode that supports image stabilization. And finally, here is 1080p 60 with image stabilization turned on. Doesn't support image stabilization in 1080p 120, but the resolution in 1080p 60 is not too bad. So let's take a look at some close-up video starting with 4K 60. There's no EIS at 4K 60, but overall the camera does a good job with lots of detail. My only complaint is that there's a little bit of crispiness around those details, a little bit of crunchiness, maybe a result of too much sharpening being applied. Using 4K 30 with the EIS on, there's a pretty notable loss of detail compared to 4K 60. I think that's because it crops in so damn much compared to 4K 60. Also, I noticed a little bit of difference in the color balance in this clip versus the last one. So 1440p 60 with EIS on, yeah, not a ton of detail, about as much as 1080p 60. So here's 1080p 60 with the EIS turned on. As you can see, very, very similar to 1440p. Now let's put them side by side and do a little bit closer up. If you're watching on a phone screen, you might not be able to see much difference. And honestly, on a big TV screen even, I'm not seeing much difference. The 1440p 60 and the 1080p 60 are pretty evenly matched. Now let's look at the 4K 30 versus the Phantop Moment 6S's 4K 30. And as you'll see, there is a little bit difference in color balance in terms of how the two cameras process color. I prefer the Firefly X over the Phantop Moment 6S because the Moment 6S consistently blows out yellows. The main difference I see here is on the stalks of flowers like the sunflower. 6S, it has more detail, that's for sure, but it has worse color. 6S's color balance can get pretty damn wonky sometimes.
Alright, so here we are out in the lake, and it's time to test the waterproof capabilities of the Firefly X.
Hey, this is future Dreki, just interrupting this lovely shot where you get to stare at me half naked. Yeah, it was a little bit too windy and the audio quality didn't work out, so I'm just gonna narrate over top of this and pretend that it's the original audio. Oh my goodness, it's so cold in this lake, but I have to test the waterproof capabilities of this camera. I don't really trust that it's gonna be waterproof and I'm gonna be able to finish this review, but since you're watching this on YouTube, you can tell there's another like 5 minutes to this review, so you know it survived, and there's no surprise whatsoever. Anyways, let's jump in the water in 3, 2, 1. Whee!
5 seconds of water to survive. Still seems to be filming.
Looking at the video quality itself, the Firefly X is rather middle of the road when it comes to real 4K cameras. Keep in mind, in this instance, I'm referring to cameras that shoot an actual 4K resolution, not these cheap crap Amazon cameras that you get for like $70 to $100 that shoot garbage. I'm talking about real, genuine 4K. The Firefly X does that. But it's just not as good as some competitors. For example, I find the SJCam SJ8 Pro has more detail, but I like the exposure and color profile better on the Firefly X. I find that the Vantop Moment 6S and the Akaso V50X both have better image stabilization, but compared to the Vantop Moment 6S, the Firefly X is just, oh my goodness, it's so much better because the color profile is on point. And the Akaso V50X, as good as it is at gyro stabilization, it can't hold a candle to the Firefly X when it comes to 1080p resolutions. That includes 1080p 60, 1080p 120. The Firefly X is so much better at every single one of those resolutions. So if that was a lot of confusing bullcrap to you, let me sum it up in easier to understand terms. The Firefly X is a good camera, but it's not the best camera. What makes it an easier recommendation is that it's pretty good at everything it does. It doesn't have any glaring issues that separate it out from the pack and make me say, well, maybe you should second guess this camera. No, the Firefly X isn't the best at gyro stabilization. It's got these weird jitters that happen every so often when you bump pretty hard. It's not the best at detail, but it hits a pretty good middle ground when it comes to all of these things. So here's the problem. It's a little bit more expensive than every other camera that I've listed. The Akaso V50X, for example, goes between $100 to $120. I've seen it as low as $80. And at that price, it's a no-brainer. The Firefly X is $100 more than that. The Vantop Moment 6S, for example, it's what, $150 normally? It's a little bit cheaper overall, so the line starts to blur. The Firefly X, it does not come with an additional waterproof case. You'd have to buy that separately. So if you wanted to do more advanced water things, such as cliff jumping with the camera, or water skiing, or anything where the camera could have high impact with water, you're gonna need to pay that extra. And honestly, once you reach $200 as a price point, you're looking at a second-hand DJI Osmo Action, or even a GoPro Hero 6 or sometimes Hero 7 Black. And yeah, despite them being second-hand, that's probably a better deal overall if you're looking for the highest quality at the lowest price. To make it clear, I really do like the Firefly X. It stands out in being fully waterproof, with good build quality aside from the slightly sketchy waterproofing. The video quality overall is quite pleasant and appealing. The gyro stabilization is about average. Still photos are pretty good too. I mean, yeah, it's got a lot going for it. But now when the price point gets higher like this, I start comparing it to real professional tier cameras from big brands such as DJI or GoPro. It can't really hold a candle to the higher end cameras from those companies. Maybe some of them are almost double the price, but most people I found willing to spend $200 US are willing to spend $300 or $350, and the Osmo Action at that price point is just so much better. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment whether you think I'm right or wrong. Give me some recommendations of cameras I could look at. I know it's been a while since I posted a video, and it probably will be another while before I post the next one. Nonetheless, I'm still here and just kind of rethinking on the style of videos I want to post and how I want to go about doing this. So hopefully there will be more good things in the future, and until then, I'll see you soon.
So here we are today just playing some disc golf up in Penticton, BC. The course is called Three Blind Mice, and it's got these really lovely flower sections, some nice open sections, some nice treed sections. Overall, super duper beautiful. But today it is hot, hot, hot. Wish we'd gone a little bit earlier, but maybe next time we'll know for better. All right, give it a throw. Oh, nice. Oh my goodness, I thought you were gonna bounce right in.